So DC FanDome was a few months ago now, and after the MCU Phase 4 event, I remember I made a video where I ranked all of the upcoming Marvel films from my least anticipated to my most anticipated, and when thinking about a video to do today, I realised that I didn't actually do that same video, but for the DCEU and the upcoming DC films that were announced at DC FanDome, so let's do it now. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Deck, and if you enjoy talking about movies in any way, shape or form, you're going to feel right at home here. In today's video, as I mentioned in the intro, I'm going to be ranking all 7 of the upcoming DC films from my least anticipated to my most anticipated. This is just a purely personal list based on what we know from the films, what we've seen from the films, if we've seen anything, and it's just how I personally feel about them, how excited I am for them, again, ranked accordingly. So with all that said and all out of the way, let's jump into the video. But before we get into the ranking, let's just say that, of course, this is just my personal opinion. These are just the films that I'm looking forward to the most, and also make sure you leave your own personal list in the comment section down below. I'm very interested to see which one you are most excited about. And with all that said and all that addressed, let's jump into the ranking. So kicking off my list at the bottom in number 7 as my least anticipated DC film among this slate is Shazam 2: Fury of the Gods. Now, the only reason this film is as low as it is because we just barely know anything about it. We don't know anything about it. It hasn't gone into production really at all. We haven't seen anything from it. We don't really know many details about it outside of the title, which was revealed at DC FanDome. And it's a shame that this film is at the bottom of the list, because if you know my videos and if you've seen my DCEU ranking video, you'll actually know that Shazam is actually my favourite DCEU film. I actually love Shazam. I think that movie is awesome. So, you know, to say that this movie is at the bottom isn't actually a bad thing. It doesn't mean I'm not excited about this film. I absolutely am. I love Shazam and I can't wait to see the sequel. It's just out of these films, it's the one that I am the least excited about and the least I feel towards, because we just don't really know anything about it and we haven't really seen anything from it yet. Coming in at number 6, we have his arch nemesis, Black Adam. Now, this film is one of the more weirder ones among the DC slate. This is definitely one that I was very surprised that got announced. You know, this film was announced years ago, but the fact that this movie is actually happening now and is actually going into production is bizarre to me. But either way, I think that Black Adam could be a really different and really interesting film for the DCEU. Of course, this film does star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Black Adam, which is a very, very different and very interesting casting choice. But this seems to be a really fun movie. I mean, you have The Rock, which is, you know, always a good start. And then on top of that, they're going to be building upon the history of the DC Universe in this film with introducing the world of Kahndaq, which is where Black Adam comes from. And on top of that, they also are introducing the JSA, the Justice Society of America. We're getting casting information for those characters. Like, we know that Aldous Hodge is playing Hawkman, and we know that Noah Centineo is playing Atom Smasher. So they are just continuing to expand upon this world by introducing these new, fresh, and exciting characters. And it very much seems like this movie is going to be Black Adam versus the JSA, at least initially. And I think that's going to be a really interesting story and one that I can't wait to see unfold on screen. And with The Rock, you know, being in the front of this film, producing it once again, I think that this could be a really exciting, really different, and really fresh film for DC. Bringing us into the top 5 is Wonder Woman 1984. Of course, this is the sequel to 2017's Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman was a film that I really enjoyed. I thought that that film was genuinely surprisingly good. You know, it was at a time when DC was really struggling, like it was in its very early days, and the films weren't exactly being that well received, and Wonder Woman was kind of this breath of fresh air. You know, it came out, it was one of the more difficult characters for them to do, and for them to adapt, and I think they did it tremendously. You have all the stuff in Themyscira, which was fantastic, and then when you actually get into the present day, in World War I, those scenes were just incredible. So with 1984 bringing us into the 80s setting, I think could be a really fun direction for the movie to go. And bringing back Chris Pine as Steve Trevor, I'm very interested to see what they do with him. Kristen Wiig is playing Cheetah, which is just such an interesting casting and also a very weird character to bring into live action, but I can't wait to see it on screen. And we also have Pedro Pascal playing Maxwell Lord, who I think is perfect casting for that role. So really cool ideas going on in this film, and the only reason why this film is actually lower, because I'm actually very excited about this film and the trailers have all been amazing, it's just the reason why it's so low is because it's actually coming out relatively soon. So we're actually going to be seeing it pretty soon. I mean, obviously, with everything going on in the world, we don't actually know when we're going to see this film. If everything hadn't have happened, we actually would have seen it by now. But unfortunately, you know, stuff happens in the world. But Wonder Woman 1984 still looks like a great film and a great sequel to an already fantastic start to a franchise. Coming in at number 4 is Zack Snyder's Justice League, or the Snyder Cut. The fact that this film is actually happening and is actually coming together is just amazing. And, you know, I've always been one of those people who's been rather pessimistic about the Snyder Cut. It's just a film that I was always like, for one, I don't really feel like there's much to it, and also two, I don't know if I really care to see it. But now that it's actually happening, you know, we've got a trailer for it, we've had a lot of details about things that are coming into it. I'm very excited about the Snyder Cut. I have come over to the side of being incredibly excited about it, because this film is just entirely, from what we can see of it, it's an entirely new Justice League film. This is going to be nothing to do with the original version that we got in 2017. It's going to be following that story particularly. It's going to be completely different, because we know that Joss Whedon, for the most part, kind of reshot that entire movie. This is going to be the original story that Zack wanted to tell, but with the power of him having hindsight and him able to change and adapt things that he perhaps didn't like or would like to change now. And this could be the ultimate perfect Justice League film, at least from Zack Snyder. While I'm unclear about how this movie is actually going to go down and how it's actually going to be received, because obviously we've seen films like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, both directed by Zack Snyder and both not particularly well received films, I'm very interested to see how people actually take to the Snyder Cut. But what's incredible about it is the fact that it is actually happening. You know, the fan support, we all came together, well, not really me specifically, but you know, people watching this video and people online, they came together to make this happen, and it actually happened. And I think that's just an incredible kind of little story there. So to see that actually come into fruition, and for this movie to actually be happening now, and Zack finally able to complete his vision on Justice League, is fantastic. And again, we know about so many different things coming into it. We know that Joe Manganiello is coming back as Deathstroke. We know that Jared Leto is coming back as the Joker. Like, there's so many incredible additions that probably weren't even in Zack's original script for the film that are being added into this movie, because it's truly a fan service film, and I'm truly excited to see what they do with it when it drops on HBO Max and other places around the world later in 2021. Now, coming in with the top 3 is The Flash. Now, this film is still crazy to me that this film hasn't happened yet. I mean, this film was originally slated for 2018 on the original DCEU slate, and it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, with directors leaving and then another director gone and another director gone. But now we seem to have finally settled into something, and The Flash is looking to be one of the most exciting films among this slate. Now, I am a big Flash fan from the TV show. I love that show, and with that, I'm instantly excited to see a Flash movie. And, you know, Ezra Miller's Flash is one that I wasn't too hot on. I didn't like him that much in Justice League, but we'll see how he does in the Snyder Cut. And also, his appearance in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover was a really nice surprise, and one that really went well for me. You know, seeing him interact with Grant Gustin's Flash was a really cool scene for me personally. So I'm very excited about this Flash film. Also, Andy Muschietti, who directed both It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2, is handling this film, which I think is a really cool choice. DC has had a lot of success with horror directors directing their films, like James Wan directed Aquaman, and David F. Sandberg directed Shazam. So bringing in yet another horror director like Andy Muschietti to direct The Flash, I think is a really smart choice. And what's most exciting about this film is that it seems to be really delving into the idea of the multiverse. And this is something that we've seen DC really delving into, you know, a lot recently, and I think a lot of that stems from the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover we got on the CW, where we did have the meeting of the two Flashes, and on top of that we also have Robert Pattinson's The Batman, which I'll talk about in a minute, which, you know, is set in a completely different universe. We also had Joaquin Phoenix's Joker film last year, which was also set in a different parallel universe. DC have been really expanding the multiverse among its films lately, and I think that's really exciting, and The Flash is going to be delving into that completely. We know that Michael Keaton is returning as his version of Batman from the 80s, which is just an incredible bit of news that I cannot wait to see unfold. I love Michael Keaton, and even though I don't love those Batman films from the ages, you know, they weren't exactly, you know, in my time, not exactly my taste, I know that they are very beloved for a lot of people, and I did enjoy his performance as Bruce Wayne and Batman, so I'm incredibly excited to see what he's going to bring into that. Also, we know that Ben Affleck is also returning as his interpretation of Batman, in most likely his final performance in the role, which I think is just super exciting. This film has got so much going on, there's going to be so much awesome fan service throughout, and I think that The Flash has now just become this movie that is so much bigger than it was ever envisioned to be. Now, my runner-up for my most anticipated DC film is The Batman. Now, this film honestly could be number 1. I am so excited about The Batman, but this is where it lands for me. The trailer we got at DC FanDome is honestly one of the best trailers I've seen in a very, very long time. I still watch it now. It just gets me so incredibly hyped for the film, and everything we know about this movie is just perfect. It seems like it's going to be such a darker direction, which is what I like in my Batman films. You know, I love the Dark Knight trilogy because of how dark and grounded it was. This film looks to be following that similar template, and I think that Robert Pattinson is such a phenomenal casting choice as Bruce Wayne and Batman. You know, we've seen him in so many incredible roles over the last few years, like The Lighthouse and Good Time and Tenet. He's just continuing to prove that he is just a tremendous, tremendous actor. So to cast him as Bruce Wayne and Batman is something I'm really excited to see. And the other casting choices in the film are just phenomenal. Particularly, I am so excited about Paul Dano as the Riddler. I think that is such perfect, ideal casting, and I can't wait to see what he does with the role. Zoe Kravitz is playing Catwoman, John Turturro is playing Falcone. It's just such an expansive, really cool, almost subversive cast that you wouldn't expect for a Batman film, but when you think of it, it just works. And then you have Matt Reeves directing it, which I'm not the biggest lover of Matt Reeves. I mean, the Planet of the Apes films he directed, I don't really like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War I did like, but I still prefer Rise above those two. He's not my favorite director in the world, but he seems really passionate about the role. He seems really excited about this film, and he seems to be really putting his heart and soul into it, and that's all I can really ask. So I'm really excited about this film. The trailer's incredible. I think obviously they are setting up for a trilogy here, and I think this could be, you know, rivaling Christopher Nolan as one of the best Batman stories we've seen on film. My most anticipated DC film, though, has to be The Suicide Squad. Now, this is just such a personal pick for me because I just really am beyond excited for this movie. This could be, honestly, my most anticipated movie of next year. I'm just so hyped about it. You know, I was excited about it before DC FanDome, but DC FanDome secured it as my most anticipated film like that, because it's just, it looks so incredible. It looks so much fun, and that's all I want from these DC comic book movies, is I really want them to be fun above all else, and that's what this movie looks to be. It looks to be pure fun. You've got James Gunn, of course, the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, helming this film, and that is just perfect, because the original Suicide Squad film we got, which I'm actually secretly a really big fan of, that movie... Sorry, my throat completely busted then. The original Suicide Squad film was kind of envisioned and based on what James Gunn did with Guardians of the Galaxy, so to bring him in to direct the Suicide Squad, it's just almost pitch perfect, you know? And on top of that, you just have this incredible expansive cast. David Dastmalchian is playing Polka Dot Man, you know, you've got John Cena playing Peacemaker, and then you've got Idris Elba playing Bloodsport, Peter Capaldi is playing The Thinker. It's just such an awesome, incredible cast with such incredibly deep-cut DC characters, you know, a lot of them that I've not even heard of. There's just so many weird and wonderful and wacky characters that are written throughout the film, and I think that on the action side of it, it's going to be incredible. On the story, it's going to be really fun, and I'm really excited to see how brutal this movie is. You know, James Gunn has said, don't get attached to anybody. Nobody is safe in this film. DC has given him completely free reign to kill off whoever he wants. So I wouldn't be surprised if you get some really big deaths in this. I'm even expecting Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn to potentially die in this film. I think there's literally no limit, and that's what excites me about it. And again, I'm a really big fan of the first Suicide Squad film from David Ayer. I know a lot of people hate that movie. It's one of the worst films in the DCEU. I just really enjoy it. So I'm already hyped for a Suicide Squad sequel just because of that. And even though this doesn't seem to be a direct sequel to that film, it's still a new Suicide Squad film, and it looks to be such a completely new and fun and fresh direction that I can't wait to see. And like I say, this is rivaling films like Dune and Fast and Furious 9 as one of my most anticipated films of 2021 as a whole. So there you have it, guys. There's my ranking of all the upcoming DC films in anticipation, from least anticipated to the most anticipated. What do you think of my list? And also, what is your list? Make sure you leave it in the comment section down below. And as always, if you want to see more DC videos, movie videos, and TV videos, and everything else in between, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And hope to see you guys again next time.